God of War.
Impressions, boy. Hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, Mr.
Saw Bridges bringing you a lucky episode 56.5.
I like that. Yeah, someone actually acknowledged that the other day, and I loved because I was like, hey, look, my numbering scheme, as weird as it is, helps me helps me
point fives.
Yeah, someone was
point
like,
fives are.
Somebody said your 0.5 episode was really good. I was like, thanks. I really appreciate that you would call it the 0.5 episode.
So hold on. If we have now, here's where we get into the hard part of if we have a reader mail followed by impressions. How does that work?
It'll just be reader mail.
Okay,
it will not be an episode.
0.75.
That'd be even funnier.
A quarter of a show.
Anyway, what we are doing with this episode is giving our thoughts and impressions on the new God of War. And I gotta say, first and foremost, boy.
Yeah. Was it a ride?
Yeah, it was a ride. I rolled credits today just, for clarity's sake. So I've done a lot of the side stuff just while playing the game. I'll get that out of the way very quickly. But I did, towards the end of the game, really want to keep going in the story because I really wanted to know what was happening. And then from there, I also wanted to just give a resolution to the experience as a whole. That way, when I go forward for a platinum run, I can do so freely without feeling like I'm leaving something lingering. I have that problem with games. I don't say problem, but I have that in games where I feel like once the story of the pace of the story ramps, that right. I need to keep the pace myself. So I want to see it through because I'm like, this feels urgent. So I'm going to go do it. But
we should make it clear that the first half is going to be completely spoiler free. If you guys are new to our impressions, we will make it very, very clear when we will jump into spoilers. There will be a break, enough time for you guys to pause your video if you have it, in your lap, in your car or something. You don't have to worry about hearing spoilers.
Yep, but before that, I wanted to say again, we are Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. In case this is your first time hearing us, we post normally every Monday at 10 a.m. PST, 12 p.m. CST to YouTube in video format. If you find us on there and you like us, give us a subscribe or consider it, and give us a thumbs up if you like the video. Comment, let us know what you think about the game or what you thought about our thoughts. And we also post on everything we do, at least as far as Triangle Squared is concerned, on podcast services, so you can listen there and don't have to worry about video at all. Every time we do impressions, like you said, we always make sure that there's a spoiler-free gate, and then there's a hard cut or hard pause to make sure we move into spoilers. That being said,
and our impressions don't go up on podcast services, do they?
Yeah, they do.
They do?
Yeah.
I looked at SoundCloud the other day, and I did not see our impressions for whatever.
Far Cry?
Yeah, Far Cry.
Yeah, no, it's there. Absolutely. So,
SoundCloud did not like those. I don't guess. It did not show up for me.
I mean, considering that's our host, that's an issue.
I know. Yeah.
But I'll check it out.
Spotify already doesn't like us enough, but yeah, I'll have to look again.
All right, Saul. So, the way we're going to do this is we're going to give our general thoughts on the game from a almost pros and cons style list, what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, and I'm going to go ahead and let Saul kind of get an idea of what he liked about it as a whole, and then I'll give my idea of what I liked about it as a whole and what I didn't like about it, and then we'll go from there. So, Saul, what did you like about the game? What did you not like about the game? Go.
Sure. So I'll obviously start off with what I liked. I think that Sony Santa Monica did a fantastic job overall. My complaints with the games, while they are complaints, they're very minor, and they did not take away from the overall experience of a game. And that's how I think that complaints in a game should be done. That if you at least have something to complain about, that it still did not take over your overall experience, and it did not bother you.
Yeah, it didn't detract. Gotcha.
So obviously the overall story was fantastic. I liked all of the characters involved, and like I said, we're staying kind of low on any kind of spoilers or anything like that. I grew a lot with Atreus and Kratos. I thought that they had almost a humor about them in which Atreus was trying to be funny or trying to tell a joke or something, and Kratos just wasn't having any of it. And then the times in which they really bonded, and the times in which you could see Kratos warming up to his son, as odd as that was. He had like a Dr. Cox JD moment in the very opening hour of which he tried to put his hand on the back of Atreus, but then pulled away. And he did that, I think,
which we saw in the
times.
E3 trailer. Just
yeah,
so
you
know,
that is not a spoiler by any means. I mean, even if it was, I don't think you'd care that much about that part. But anyways, the game had a very, very strong opening hook that was about an hour in. From then on, I was hooked, and the overall story experience had me thinking even when I put the controller down and the credits rolled. And I will say that as far as the actual overall story goes, I have not played a game this current year that I think will top it. We still have a couple games to go, though. We have Detroit as a big title. We have Spider-Man as a big title. And I'm curious to see if the story in either one of those games could trump this one. Doubting it on Spider-Man, but Detroit could be a contender. So I think that if you're looking for a cinematic, story-driven experience for this year, I think that you may have very well found it. But other than the actual overall story, the gameplay was fantastic. I played in performance mode. So I got that stable 60. Noticed drops here and there. It wasn't exactly as stable as I was hoping it would be.
It's unlocked with the potential to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was fine. I don't think that there was any performance. Like, there was a couple hiccups, but nothing major. And pretty much the overall gameplay in terms of combat was really good. A little bit of a learning curve, I would say. Took me about 2 hours to get over it. And a lot of people had problems with the attacking buttons. That actually was not my problem. It was more so dodging and learning exactly when this game wants you to dodge and roll out of the way of stuff. Because, it has the Bloodborne formula or Dark Souls formula of R1 normal, R2 heavy, and then L1 shield. The runic attacks in the game were really fun to use. There was a couple that I found and messed around with late game. About halfway through, I had the set that I used for the rest of the game, just because the value that they had. And the puzzles in the game were the perfect kind of puzzles. The best kind of puzzle in any form of media, whether it is real life, a video game, a TV show, whatever it could be, is the kind that in which you have all the answers in front of you. It is your job to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And I felt like that is what pretty much all the puzzles were. There was a couple of points here and there where you were searching for an item, then taking it back to another spot, which I thought was not tedious, but it's still not my preferred way to solve a puzzle. And games rely on that already too heavily. Luckily, this game did not. I just said it was only a couple times that it did it.
And for variety's sake.
And exactly. It wouldn't get the same old puzzle formula a little stale. So as far as gameplay goes, you already have great gameplay, great combat. The difficulty, I played on the 3rd difficulty, not the Give Me God of War difficulty, but
I did as well.
I forgot what it's
called.
Give
Me a Challenge?
Give Me a Challenge, yeah. And I thought that difficulty was never hard. It was challenging. It was never something I felt was unfair.
Exactly. That's what I was going to. It's fair. Yeah.
And I felt like that anytime I died, it was because I had mistakes that I had made in combat, and I had to fix those mistakes. So pretty much it hits every nail on the head for me in terms of a good story-based action game can go. Especially with things like strategy in your fighting, solving puzzles, moving objects around to solve said puzzles and stuff of that nature. It worked out really, really well, including the character development, which is another strong point. And that halfway through, I'm going to say the rest of this in spoilers, but halfway through there was almost a little bit of a turn in the character, and I did not like it. But I understood why it was happening. And I think that in terms of all the characters, all the major named characters that you see for more than a few minutes on screen, you pretty much have a connection with them in one way or another. You either hate them or you love them, and you're curious all the same to see more. And I think that was another very strong point in this story, is the characters were just lovable. And I don't think I ever had a single moment in the story where I was like, I don't like that character, get him out of this game. And that happens in a lot of story-based games for me, where there's a particular character I don't like. But that pretty much wraps up what I loved about the game. I think that it did everything a game can do well, that a game is aspiring to do for you. The gameplay was fantastic. The story was fantastic. The soundtrack was amazing as well. Can't forget about that.
Yeah, very much.
If there is 2 problems that I have with the game, 2 very minor problems, and one of which I will get into in the spoilers. I won't even go into here, so I'll just leave the one other problem that I have. And that was not exactly the length of the game, but there were definitely parts in the game that repeated these mechanics. And I did not like the mechanics at all. Just because after it was fun the first time, but after the second, third, fourth, I think it happened 5 times total, maybe 6 times total of just, and this isn't really exactly a spoiler, but you're in a room, you're in an elevator, you're on a platform of some sort, and you're moving up, down, left, right. You're just moving to a destination, and you're stuck on this platform. It's just horde battle, and I did not like that. I felt like after the second time that happened, I was tired of it, and it just felt almost pointless. It felt like almost like an artificial lengthener of a story, and I'm not going to call it that, but I felt like
yeah,
it happened. Like,
and I will say, as just a quick addendum there, I do know what you're talking about, and I agree generally that maybe it could have used less of those. That is one of the few staples of God of War that they carried forward.
Yeah, that's true.
And they really did cut it down a lot, though.
Right,
it was way more common in the other games.
I guess I can. I will elaborate on this. The other point I had, without going into spoilers, but I'll finish up with this one real quick. Is that there was points that this game does what I call the Breaking Bad formula, and that is at the tip of a story arc. There is something that happens that wants you that breaks you away, or that just has you craving to know more. It did that part great of wanting to know more. Within the first 2 hours, there was a fight that happened, and I'm like, who is that? I want to know who that is. And then there's character development and things that happen to said characters in the game, and you're like, what's going to happen to them? And you get to what you think is going to be the answer, and it's quickly pushed away, and you're put on a different path because of something that happened. That happened every single major time an arc was about to turn. And I did not like that. I did not like that what they were doing was, it was almost a tease. And you get there you're about to get an answer and it's taken away from you. It's not a big enough problem to take away from the game in a significant way, but I can definitely tell that there was, towards the end, I knew it was going to happen. I'm like, this is not about to go as what I think is going to happen. This is not about to complete this story like I think. Something's going to interrupt me right now and it's going to happen. And it did. There were way too many story interruptions, and I did not like that. I think that a couple of the side things they did have you go on could have been either cut or just completely removed from the game. Because some of those I felt like was not a time waster.
Some of them were important
and
really
to the story. Yeah,
some of them were important for what I will say humanizing of the story and events, because
it gave you more time.
While I will agree with you, and I did at first, I kind of liked the pulling out the rug from underneath you.
Yeah, I did too.
And then when they crutched it a little bit more, and I will generally say that I agree and disagree on the fact that yes, it probably could have been used less, but at the same time, it all comes together so well at the end that I don't even care.
And that's true. That's what
it
I was
pays
saying
off.
earlier.
The payoff is worth the build.
Yeah.
But what I also think is important is that they spend time doing things that realistically could happen or would happen. A lot of the times, I get annoyed when stories go perfectly how you want them to go as well, because
which is why it's great to throw a curveball.
It's a balancing act, and maybe it's not a perfect balance. But I feel like more often than not, the game hits it well, in my opinion. But continue.
Right. No, and that's true. I do like it when a game is taking me this direction, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? And then something happens, and I'm like, oh no, let me figure out how to deal with this so I can get to that and get that solution. But that happened almost every single time that a major arc was about to occur. Not necessarily when you remedied the problem that it happened with. It was just, and I'll get into this in a little bit more in spoilers, but it was more so that anytime you thought you were about to do something related to the story or solve a problem the story gave to you when you did it, you're almost interrupted. And then you have to solve that problem and then get back on track. And that's when the problem is pretty much solved through and through.
Now, I want to expound on that, but I'm going to wait until you're done, and I'll pick back up.
Okay, well, I was going to say my second problem is just the lack of enemy variety. Really.
Okay.
The mini boss is pretty much the same exact model, stapled over and over again with different colors, different abilities, different attacks.
Sure.
And the same goes for pretty much all of the enemies. I think there's probably less than 10 total enemy types. And when I think about it, the one I like the most, the Dark Elves, are my least favorite enemy to fight.
Oh,
I
yes.
hated those. But that's pretty much it. Just really, everything was so perfect as a whole that those two main complaints will not take away from my overall experience.
No game's perfect.
It's as close to a perfect game can get because the game is so good that it takes those flaws and minuscules them so much.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I've said about it. Like, obviously no game's deserving of a 10, and we don't rate games to begin with, but it makes me, the overall package makes me think the game is perfect. It makes it feel perfect despite its flaws.
Okay, so I'll say, based off your rating thing, yes, I do not believe in review scores.
No.
I believe in where it sits in my mind.
It's
if you
hard.
told me that I had to apply a number of things, we've said this before, my subjective 10 out of 10 is way different because a 10 out of 10 in my mind is something that's a 10 out of 10 for me, regardless of the flaws.
Of course.
The original Nier is not a perfect game, but
No.
it's a 10 out of 10.
Exactly. Because
So
it's
I think it's important to frame what I'm
a 10
saying.
out of 10 for you.
So I will say right now, if I had God of War is one of these games that it does not matter. The sum of its parts is so much greater than everything
Every
else.
flaw, yeah.
That it becomes absolutely. I could not forgive myself for not playing this game if I had played it way later and then realized what I'd missed out on, or if I would have,
And just to quickly interject is that if I have a problem with a game that it bugs me the entire of the game, and then I still talk about it when the game is over, the game did do a good enough job of presenting me something better to get my mind off that problem.
True. And now this is a little different because we're being critical on purpose.
But that is true, yeah.
Also, to expand a little bit on what you're talking about with the game, kind of throwing the curveballs and detracting you off of things, again, I do agree that it did a lot. But the one thing that I really enjoyed, and I think I really enjoyed, but I think the thing that strongly justifies it and makes it okay is that it was always in the name of story and character development. It was always actually in the name of character development. And it's not even, a lot of the times that you get pulled off the path, it's actually to really develop some characters.
Right.
And if you didn't have that, I'm not sure that the game would have been able to make you connect with the characters, because this game is at its best when it's at its slowest. And that sounds weird, but the way the pacing is handled, and there's a lot of things that go on that you're like, oh man, this is so cool. But the parts that will probably stay with me forever are the
slowest parts
that are slow and very personal and very touching. And if you didn't get these, and you didn't get these here's what we got to do, this is what we're going to show, this has a purpose. You talk about Breaking Bad. And that's a great example, because while Breaking Bad does throw off a lot of things, everything in Breaking Bad has a purpose and builds towards your eventual viewpoint of every character and everything that happens in that show.
That's exactly
Same thing happens here.
what I meant. Yep.
And that's important. So I agree that it's a problem, but it's a problem that if it's going to have to be a problem, it's one that has a really great caveat as to why it's doing it.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why I can forgive this kind of a flaw. It was frustrating, I'm not going to lie, towards the end of the game to get answers that I wanted, because it just felt like it took so long to get there. But at no time did I put the controller down out of boredom or frustration to get those answers, and it worked out well.
All right, well, now to talk about things that I don't, and this is going to be really weird. Because of the way the game lingers, and I'm still very fresh in it, I'm sure maybe when I have a little bit more time, I will have something that I really, really think. The only thing I can really say that I dislike about the game is the same thing as Saul, which is this idea of pulling you away. But like I basically said, there's a really good reason as to why it's doing it, so I don't even count it against the game. So I'm going to move on to things I like, and I want to agree with Saul, first of all, that the combat is fantastic. It is probably the greatest example of having a dev know something is right for you and doing it even though you didn't know you wanted it. Because as soon as I got it, and I got it in my hands as a long-time fan of the series, and I've loved the combat the entirety of the series, this is now my favorite combat that the series has ever done. And I was actually telling Saul that at one point of the game that I kind of have a wish that I could just go back and play God of War 3 in the entirety of this camera angle, because you just start to love it. It's so more.
Yeah, you do.
It's way more weighty. And there's something about it. The original games, because everything's pulled and set cameras, sometimes you would do things that didn't feel like your hits were connecting.
Well, to be honest,
but every hit in this feels weighty and concise and like, wow, I really just hit that person.
As someone who just played God of War 3 for the first time, I played the first two, but God of War 3 for the first time, 2 months ago?
Sure.
I can tell you right now that game is nowhere near as weighty with the regular enemies.
Yeah,
it is
the only time
solid
that you get
heft when you hit an enemy in this game.
Yeah, and whereas 3 you only really get heft when you're doing big scale boss fights.
Yeah.
So I definitely I love the combat where they take it. I think that my biggest pro I'm going to give them is that I cannot believe, and I worded it this way earlier to someone. This is probably to me the best reboot / sequel that has ever existed. It's one of the only, probably the only, I can't even think of another time that this has happened, where you get not only a reboot, but you get to continue on with the character in a world that is also, knowledgeable, or at least, it references back to the fact that this previous world that we spent this time in is connected, even though everything about this game and everything about Kratos in this game could have been the first time that you see it.
And what's crazy is there's only one other game that comes to mind, and it's from another major series, and it's A Link Between Worlds. because it's essentially the same style, and it's essentially one of the best games in the series too.
Okay.
So it shows you that
there's
this
something
series,
to that.
That the way this formula works is effective when done right. Because I'm sure it can be done terribly wrong.
What I take from that is that no publisher, no studio has the excuse of making another sequel that is just bland and doesn't change anything and tries playing it safe. Because while I understand, and this is very important to talk about, gaming fans and fans of a series as a whole are some of the hardest people to please that there is. And I understand because I've been part of it. You get to this point where when a developer tries to make a change, but somehow just doesn't pull it off or doesn't believe in it enough or give it enough of its due diligence to make sure that it's going to do it in a way that proves to you that you needed it that way, it comes off bad and the developers get backlash for changing things. And then the other problem is that they don't change enough. They get backlash from people who are mad because the game has not changed and it's stagnated, which is basically what Ascension was for God of War. It was like,
and that's what I've
here's
heard.
A game that's okay, but it's received poorly because it does nothing that reinvents the wheel at all. This is a game that by all means was unnecessary instead of just being another game. And yes, there's story that comes out, but what did you give me gameplay wise that I couldn't have done in the other one? And that's and it starts to be a thing. And so I'm so glad that they had the balls, and I really mean the balls, and that Sony had the balls to say yes to this. And I really hope that the effect that this has is that other studios and other people, and I'm just throwing examples out there, if Halo were to go back to the drawing board and say, what can we do with this series that feels decidedly true to the series,
third-person
but
battle
completely
royale,
reimagines everything that we've known about this game and its characters while still letting you care about Master Chief. Would that not be amazing if they could pull it off?
I felt like they tried that with Halo 5, and it did not work.
See, but Halo 5 also felt too similar, definitely from a campaign standpoint, 2, 4, 3, 2.
Well, in a way, yeah, but it's also rare that a game developer that you could tell how much Corey cared about this game.
Yes.
Just based off of his reactions to the reviews, you can see how much he put his heart into this game.
That video, after playing the game and finishing the game, I feel like I understand him in that video even more than I did.
It's like a weight off of his chest that I cannot imagine I could bear.
And you know what? I gotta go ahead and shout it out. I am proud as hell of him
for
that because I'm sure he is so proud. I'm proud of the studio for helping realize that vision, and I'm sure that a lot of it was around him too. But going back to things I liked about the game, the openness of the world is actually very surprising because it's not an open world. It is it's like an open overworld with a bunch of different hub worlds. It's like a center area that you can go to, and then there's a bunch of connected hub worlds that you go and spend time in.
It's almost Demon Souls.
Very much so. I mean, it's a very great thing. They used a lot.
The hub world's not big in Demon Souls at all.
Yeah. Whereas
Bloodborne too, I guess. Yeah. That works.
Whereas the idea here is that you have one area that you can go to that has a bunch of extra areas that you can go to, like even the main hub world, Midgar. I'll be enough to say that.
I think that's a spoiler.
Okay, yeah, but anyway, when you're there, you have a bunch of the stuff going on in the outer parts. Like you get to this one part, and then you're like, okay, well, this is probably it, and like what I've already done. But then you start being like, no, I can open this, and this, and there's way more here, and I can't believe that's even part of the map. I thought that was just permanent fog of war, like it doesn't exist. But then I opened it, and I was like, wow, this is big.
And the crazy thing is, this isn't exactly a spoiler by any means, but you don't go to all the realms in the story.
Yes.
There's 3 or 4 realms that you can, or 3.
There's a lot of optional.
Go to optionally.
Yeah, there's a lot of optional in the game, and I love that. So the game's sense of exploration, when the pacing of the story is set to a point that I felt like it was worth me taking the time to go out and explore a little bit because it felt right. And some of it comes down to the characters. When I was playing with Atreus, I felt like Atreus was curious mind and that he would like exploring, which made me want to go explore with him more.
And the audio cues of like, hey, we could go do this if you want, or we can go explore.
The game reinforces that you can do this.
Great.
And now I do like that, and if you go ahead and decide to do what you want to do, it doesn't shake its head or nod twice. It's just like, okay, we're back on. Here's what I want to do. It was odd that I wanted to.
You.
I actually felt, and one of the things the game does really well is that you interact with Atreus, and they've already said this, but you interact with him through the square button. There's a lot of times throughout the game that you actually get to do stuff with him where you are basically in control of him, but not as a full control, but as this weird secondary control that's really well done, and it makes you have a connection to where you somewhat feel like you're playing and overseeing the events of Kratos, so you do want to do the things that you feel like is right to what Kratos is feeling in that moment, but you also feel like this pull to also want to do some of the things that Atreus wants to do because you understand where he's coming from
and his curious nature of being a kid.
So it's really interesting and wanting to foster that curiosity while also do what Kratos needs to do in this journey, because I feel for Kratos. Another thing to this game's credit, like I've said, is that you can come into this game completely virgin to the series and you will get everything you need from this game. But having the framing of the other 3 games makes me care that much more about wanting to see Kratos through this journey. And I am curious to see from some people who've never played God of War played this, I'm curious if they felt that same sense of devotion to Kratos and his journey.
And realistically, just like me, because like I said earlier, I played the first one, I played the second one, beaten. I can't say that I beaten the third one, obviously, but I know the gist of the series enough so it was emotionally impacting to me too. Because like I could understand what was going on. I understood what Kratos was when they alluded to that.
Yes.
I understood when they called him Ghost of Sparta. I'm like, okay, I know this. I understand all of this. And I even explained it to my fiance as we were playing the gist of the series and how I already know how 3 ends. And I'm not going to spoil that here if you're playing it. I would suggest playing it because it is a fun game.
Or at least if you want to and you haven't played this yet and you want to go into it with more of a connection to Kratos, I would say at least watch a little bit of a story recap about the 3.
Yeah,
I think you could probably pull that off. So.
Probably 10 minutes to understand the entirety of the first trilogy.
Yeah, sure. But one of the last things I want to touch on too is the systems in the game. I actually really ended up loving the RPG systems, which is odd because one of the things I did was actually, and I think Liam did very similar to, is I took things that I got very early on, and I realized that they fit the build that I wanted the most. And I went ahead and maxed them out and I kept them. But as you can go through the game and you find these different items, as you do different side quests, you get different items for free, or you can craft different items, or you can, and this is all gear. And what I liked about the game is while I kept my set of gear and then upgraded it as I see fit, and I even though, he was talking about the runic attacks, I actually kept those because the ones they give you up front really fit the playstyle that I wanted.
Yeah.
Because it gave me more variety in my attacks. But what I liked about it is that from all the way from the runic attacks, from the light and heavy runic, what your talisman can do, which is an equipable item, what you have enchantments that you can put into slots on your armor.
Even stuff like
every bit of the
handle of your weapon.
Every bit of the meta actually went towards a build, and this is crazy, because while I did, it's very similar to what I'll say about Bloodborne, which is that the game has all this different armor, and yes, there is some, in this game, there is some armor that's just objectively better. There is you're going to get it, and you're like, I want to put this on because it's a better version of what I have. But whereas Bloodborne was like, oh, none of the armor is really better than the other, but they're all different builds, and they all do very different things. In this game, you can carry multiple sets of armor if you want to constantly switch your armor around to benefit the playstyle about what you're going to go fight. And the game, I think, supports that pretty well. The openness supports that pretty well. And even parts of the story support the wanting to change what you're doing if you really wanted to. And the game doesn't limit you at all.
Nope.
In mid-combat, you can go and change every bit of what you have on.
I loved that, too.
To be able to go, I realize in the moment what I'm lacking in. I can go and change it if I wanted to. I didn't.
Very
normally,
rare a game does that.
But I liked it because not only that, you can buy skills and I can be like, Atreus should be doing more damage. I'm gonna go upgrade this.
Yeah, and the
only thing that you're tied to, and this is again just on the mechanics side, I don't think it's spoiled. The only thing you're tied to is that upgrading your weapons does have to take place at a shop, and that's because it's a smith, who's messing with your weapons.
And the Dwarven brothers are fantastic.
Yeah,
I absolutely love the banter between them.
And I love how they're polar opposites of each other.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. No, the supporting cast, I do agree with Saul. There's never a moment that you see the cast. He says that you even if they're people that you're like they're not good necessarily, or they may not be what I would consider a good person or bad, but they're all human, and I think that's the best thing is that even but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Even the bad guys, you do actually feel for them because and other games have done this, but I'm so glad this game did it so well because every supporting character, which is like you said, any character that you see for more than once, pretty much is what I'll say.
Right.
Every character that you see more than once, which is the majority of the game, are so well written. Personalized. I mean, every character.
I would say that that's just about every voiced character.
Yes,
because I don't think there's any other characters in the game that's not voiced like enemy wise.
Actually, I'll say that in general. Yeah, every character in the game is important to some extent, and they all stick around to some extent in the story, and they all have a weird impact, and there's like everything comes together. It's really interesting the way they chose to go about doing this, but I even thought that the people who are the protagonists were very relatable.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you see them, and there's things you're like, I obviously don't like them, and I wish that this wasn't coming to this, but at the same time, I understand his plight. Right. And I understand why this is important. I understand why this is important to her or him. I mean, all these different people. You see the character and you're like, I get this person. I don't have to agree with him. Just like we're talking about Breaking Bad. You don't have to agree with him, but you like the character as a human person. You're like, I don't have to like you. I can hate you, but you're a good character.
Exactly.
And that's really important.
That's where fine writing is. Everybody hates Joffrey as a character. You can say he's the best actor, one of the best actors in the world, though, because that's his extent of acting. You hate that. So many people hate the actor so much. That's just the biggest compliment to the actor, because
like you're really
that's
selling
how good
this experience.
they are doing at their job. But I think it's a good time. Could you hit your laptop over there? I think now is a good time, judging off how long we've been recording, to go ahead and go into spoilers. Do you have anything to wrap up?
I do not have anything to wrap up. I just say go get the game, and that if you want to ask what our recommendation is, I mean, yes, recommend go get it. It's a must play.
And It is one of the few times where I finished a game and I absolutely am like, I can't even fathom telling someone that this game is not for them, even though I know it exists. Right. I just can't bring myself to say the words. And I will say that do not go past this point if you think you may not play the game, because once you spoil, like, I'm going to say that the ending is detrimental to what's going to happen with the series, and it is something that you do not want to spoil for yourself if you have the slightest doubt in your mind that you may play this game.
Yes, so I agree. And then the secondary thing I'll say is that if you've not played or if you've not beaten the game by this point, I would urge you to
say that too.
Yeah, or the first three, whatever you want to do. I would urge you to come back when you're done with the game and listen to our thoughts here, because I have a lot of things that I think are really interesting. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this.
So anybody who has been listening up to this point, comment in the down in the below. Let us know what you thought and let us know what you think. I'll take this moment out to ask, which hopefully will not provoke anybody. Please do not put spoilers in the comments.
Yes, I know we will remove them if they do.
Yeah, so. I will be quick to moderate for the comments for this. But
hard 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Spoiler time.
If you're still here, you got like 2 more seconds to get out. But man,
Half-Life 3 confirmed. Okay,
Atreus is Loki. Like, that sounds like a joke when you say it out loud, but that's.
I want to tell you right now, man. It's funny because this is me and Saul's first time talking about the story like this, because I just finished the game today and we were coming together. Saul, oh my God, dude. Every single thing, I'm talking about everything's done in the name of character development.
It was.
From Atreus falling ill.
Yep.
And what that is,
alluding
sick. Why, bringing him back to Freya, learning that it's Freya.
I mean, obviously,
everything has a part, and I cannot believe they pulled this off that way. I mean, from going off to every bit, that's why I say, like, yes, you may get mad that you were pulling off, because it's like, oh, here's the highest peak of the mountain, but apparently it's not the real highest peak in all the realms.
Oh no,
here's
I got
the highest
so
peak in all the
mad.
realms, but I can't go through it.
I'll tell you right now, the thing that made me the most angry at this game is that you get to the top of the mountain, and that's the point in which Baldir and everybody's up there for the first time.
Yes.
And then you meet Mr. Mimir, who's also another fantastic character he's actually one of my favorites. But you have to go off and pretty much grab something. I guess we could spoil it at this point.
No, yeah, I mean, we're in spoilers. Talk about it.
So yeah, you have to go off and you have to get a key to go through the gate of Jotunheim. You get back up there and then, surprise, the gate gets destroyed. And it's like, that's one of those things I was talking about. Like, you can't, that's what I was saying earlier, is I knew that would happen. I knew the second I would get back up there, something would happen. I would not be going to Jotunheim right now.
Sure. But what happened in that moment? What do you see? You see Kratos.
A dragon ride to hell?
Oh, yeah, no, but hold on. No, but this is what you see. You see Kratos this entire time after he's told his son that you are God, and at first you think, you think Atreus is handling it well. Just for the entire moment up to that, he starts to become, like you're saying, there's this turn in him. Yep. And I went from liking Atreus to being like,
get hit, like he's like, I was like,
seriously, man, you are just. And I thought it was odd because Kratos is not saying much until there's no one around, and then even then he's being kind of scarce with his words. But he's trying. You can tell he's trying to let him process what's going on, but he doesn't want his son to be like him. But all the way up until that moment, Atreus is being a dick,
yeah,
realistically,
he's
right?
basically-
And then what happens? Even when you break the gate, he's mad at you. He's a dick because he's got this new stigma in his mind. But then what happens?
Is it
Everything that happens that causes that, Modi and Magni.
Okay, he kills Magni though.
He kills Modi.
Modi, that's right. Okay,
Magni's who you
the
kill.
second he kills Modi is like, okay. He's like, we're gods. We could just do whatever. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Like,
I was like, I'm gonna have to kill him, aren't I? He's gonna be the bad guy. I'm gonna have to kill him at the end of the game.
Yeah. So when you see that going on though, and you get to the top, and then he's mad at you, and he shoots you because he thinks he's gonna be the Mr. Badass.
That pissed me off too.
And fight Baldur.
Oh my god, did that piss me off? I was so mad. I was like, kid, we're here. We're about to go to Jotunheim. Now you just caused me another 4 hours.
But what
of
happened?
detours.
He realized that in that moment, he may be a god, but he is not invulnerable.
Yeah.
He's not as strong and as headstrong as he was making himself out to be. He built himself up too much in his head. He started to think about what Kratos has done and how Kratos has had to temper himself, which he realizes. And then this goes down. He goes to hell, and he starts to see these things he's done through his own eyes, which is, it's an interesting thing because in real life you don't get to reflect on the things you've done.
No,
not that way. So when you're in hell and you see these visions, and he physically sees himself manifest,
and
killing
he's like,
the guy.
that's not me.
And it's like you can tell he's like, oh my god.
He was in complete denial at one point where he's just like, I didn't do that, did I? It was like, yeah, you did. You got drunk on power and you killed somebody because you're a god.
And I think it's also metaphorical. Like, that's not who I am as a person.
And it's double sided that way.
And I
too.
think that so it kind of plays off both ways. But that moment to me, when he sees himself doing it, and you start to see him calm down and become more his smart, thinking things through, being compassionate, and when you see that come back. I thought it was a great way to return a character that it was fun to play with him as a character that way, to go from liking him
to hating him
almost,
and then,
back to liking him and seeing the way
himself.
in which they redeem him. Yeah. Seeing Kratos as a character throughout the entirety of the game be redeemed in such a way that he is, and constantly fighting himself. And you can see that he is making a very, very conscious and inner effort to keep himself from doing the things he's done before.
Right.
And every time that he breaks out into the rage of Sparta, every time it's because, in terms of when the story calls for it, it's every time because there's no other way.
Yep.
And he's learned that and he says a line in the game that I love so much when he's like, the power in any weapon comes from here. And it's talking about the heart, but only when tempered by the mind.
Right.
And I was like, I love it because he was the sole opposite. Everything he did in the other game may have given him power, but what did he achieve with it?
Nothing. Well, killing all the gods in Greek history.
Exactly. But how did that further
I told
him?
you guys not to listen to us if you never played the first three, because now I just spoiled the first three games.
So if we're going to go into that part, my God, when you go back for the Blades of Chaos, and it's funny that I had a feeling, but there was nothing I could possibly do to have detracted from. Even if I would have said every word line for line, seeing it and experiencing it in the way that they shot it and filmed it and played off of Kratos, it was so.
What's
strong.
ironic is that you were talking in either on Twitter or Discord to somebody, and they're like, "It'd be so." Oh, it was Twitter. It was during you were responding to an older comment about the giveaway, and so I said like, I hope they use the Blades of Chaos again. And you're like, I could see that, but it'd be a surprise for certain. An hour after I'd gotten them, I'm like, oh boy.
Well, now see what I said is that he said they hope they use them again as a main weapon. I was like, and now I guess to an extent they did come back as a main weapon, and I also had a feeling. To be fair, as I started playing again, whenever you fight the ice people that your axe can't hurt, I was like, they're not going to have you go through this whole game only punching people.
Well,
so I was like, you're going to get some kind of a weapon.
I got eluded at the very beginning. It wasn't exactly towards the Blades of Chaos, but it put it in my mind when he put Loki / Atreus into the basement. He said, I thought you said never to go down here. I was like, well, what's
something is down there.
Yeah, I was like, it's like what's in that basement that he doesn't want Atreus to see. And so that's what I love, and that's what you said earlier, is that there's almost every line of dialogue alludes to something.
And it all pays off in such a satisfying way. And it's funny how a lot of it pays off in the end. Towards the end.
That's why I was getting so anxious to get to the end, because I had a million questions. And that almost is another small negative, is that you see Baldur in the first hour of the game, and you don't see him again for nearly 6. And
it's a burn of
they answer a lot of, or they ask a lot of questions in the very beginning, and they don't get answered for quite a while. So my mind was racing with like, what's this? What's that?
And then
like,
there's a million more questions coming. Like, oh God, what's up with Atreus?
Yeah. So it was just kind of like, and that's kind of another thing, is that if you do know at least a little bit about Norse mythology or the history of God of War, you knew who Baldur was before I did. because you just knew about Norse and I didn't.
Yeah.
And then
a little bit, and I'm not super knowledgeable.
Well, obviously Atreus is the son of a god, so he's a god in some way. But the last boss fight was really, really cool. I will say that much. The boss fight between Baldur and then Freya enchanting the fallen giant again. What was his name?
I can't remember.
I want to say it started with a T, but because I kept thinking it was Thor, but it wasn't. But I thought it was really, really cool, and just the Dragon Ball Z aspect of the game. Like, it's crazy. The second we fought Baldur in the first hour of the game, and I was like, this is Dragon Ball Z. And then to go on Twitter and see people talking about how, like, they're like, I'm not saying much, but man, God of War sure is Dragon Ball Z nowadays. I'm like, they know exactly. They're thinking of exactly the same thing I thought of in the same fight.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see, and I think that it's the story was handled so well. It's literally, and I'm curious as to how much as I start going. I said my favorite part of the game is these small moments. How many more of those do we get? Because one of the things I thought was interesting is the thing they showed at PSX or PGW or whatever it was, maybe even E3 again, when they showed off the new segment, and it was just Atreus and Kratos going through and seeing the Soul Snatcher thing or whatever it was. That's not even in the story.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder if that's going to be DLC.
I don't think so. I think it's in the game, but I think it's side content. So I'm wondering how much of the side content has these small moments again that you get even more of a build. Now, don't get me wrong, the relationship is already fruitioned out, but right. I would take way more of that if I can. And that's because the father-son dynamic, it's funny because while The Last of Us, and a lot of people want to compare this game to The Last of Us, while The Last of Us did explore the idea of a father figure, this is the first time we've seen a direct paternal connection. And it's funny because, yes, it is an escort mission, but this is the second time that in recent memory, that we've seen an escort mission can actually be fun. And that's so crazy and the reason they're fun is because of the character development. Because you were talking about character development being one of your pros. That is the pro. That is it. Yeah. This game's story would not matter that much if you did not have the character development to temper it in the long run.
So going on the future of the series, I have two questions. And we lightly talked about this before we started filming. What do you make of the mural?
Mural?
Yeah, at Jotunheim, with the Kratos laying on Atreus basically, and then what looks to be like smoke or a spirit coming out of Atreus.
Well, it looks like I don't know if it was that. I felt like it was Kratos dying. I think it was. I want to say it might have been by his hand because it's almost the way they were talking about it. Bringing back the idea of sons killing fathers again because that's a prominent thing in mythologies in general.
Yeah, so it's almost like I wonder if something's gonna happen, and maybe something corrupts Kratos. Maybe something happens to Kratos and he can't go on, and Atreus has to kill him, or if Atreus ultimately ends up being.
Oh man, I would actually love that as an idea of turning the idea of sons always killing their father on its head by making it to where the son has to.
Yeah. And see,
not because of vengeance, not because of anything bad,
of something
not because of fear,
but
but yeah,
to take pity on him, basically.
That would be a really cool idea. Now I don't know where it's going to go, but it's obvious to me that and I already knew playing the game. I was like, I feel like what we're going to be doing is starting Ragnarok. I was like, no matter what. Now, I will say this. If I'm not mistaken, in normal Norse mythology, the death of Freya is what brings on Ragnarok. Now, I find it odd that they flipped it because, like you said, this game does not follow exact Norse mythology. They flipped it on its head.
Because Loki is not Thor's brother.
Here's my entire time. Because
that's not a Marvel thing. That's an actual Norse thing.
Yeah.
And if there's no way that Thor is the brother of Atreus, but it's crazy that he showed up at the end.
True, but I will say this, though. So going back to that, though, while the whole time that we were doing the fight between Baldur and that she was there, I kept thinking that I was somehow going to screw up and trying to kill Freya because she was going to jump and basically pull an Athena and sacrifice herself. And I still thought that would have been fine. Then whenever you start to see Baldur walk up and then Freya's going to let her kill him, I thought that Kratos was going to let it go because it was at least like, it was the cycle to an extent, but it was also like she's willing and he's willing, and this is not someone doing it. It's still through vengeance, but she's giving it to him.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in his mind, the reason that he stops it is that it's still a cycle. If he gives into this impulse to get revenge, it'll be so hard for him to break out, which he knows from his past experiences. But I thought that even then I was like, okay, he's going to kill Freya. This is what's going to happen, and then Freya's going to go, and Freya's death will cause Ragnarok. Well, instead,
we don't know if that's
you don't know what caused Ragnarok.
See, what I'm curious about is that So
I mean, apparently Baldur dying because it's saying that when his body started going in the snow or whatever, that it started snowing heavily.
right,
But
and that's the foreboding storms of Ragnarok.
Yeah.
That's step 2, and I think that's where the second game is going to take place, is during this storm and during and maybe you're pursuing, or you wouldn't be pursuing Freya, but maybe she's pursuing you. Kratos alluded.
Yeah, I don't know, because actually by the
forgiveness
time it was done,
Yeah.
I feel like maybe she's not going to hold to that
Right.
promise she gave. I think it was
even Kratos said that he just needs
I think
time.
it's and I think that was true. And he said he chose this, and then she was like,
Right.
"I will do blah blah blah." But then when he was like, "It couldn't continue blah blah blah," and then she was like, "Well, does he know?" And then Kratos very plainly saying, "Look, Atreus, listen. I've done this, and
Right.
this.
And
this is why I know."
almost redemption
this is,
for him at that point.
and I think
through
that
her
I
eyes.
think that kind of And now whether or not she comes back will be very interesting. If it's like almost a Civil War style thing where it's like a respect for each other, but they're still like, I don't agree with what you've done.
Well, I don't
know.
I think the second game is going to go with Thor being the main bad guy, and maybe Thor in some way or fashion killing Freya, or having you kill Freya, and then you killing Thor. And I think that's where we're going to see Odin for the first time. And because I thought that was Odin that showed up, because you didn't see his hammer at first, you saw his eye. And
You're talking about whenever Freya does the thing?
No, I'm talking about when when Thor shows up to the door. You just see his eye.
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't see his hammer until the wind blew his cape back, and you saw the hammer sitting in his waistline. So I think that the second game is going to be the storms that come of Ragnarok, and I think that at the end you're going to be facing off against Thor, maybe Freya, and something's going to happen, and we're going to see Odin, and then of course Hela, and Ragnarok will begin. And I think that this is how this trilogy is going to go. I kind of hope it goes that way because it sounds interesting.
We'll see, because it's actually a very similar arc, but handled way better character development wise as to what goes on throughout the end of. Because you're building up to the beginning of the end, which is what Ragnarok is,
right?
And so it's one of those things where if they do that, it's following a similar arc, which would be interesting. But now you're seeing Kratos take a very different role in that arc. I would be okay with that. And now I'm curious if it's going to be a trilogy or if it's going to be 2 games. And I don't want them to make a trilogy for the sake of making it a trilogy.
But I think they could fit a good narrative in there.
Now, what I'm going to end this all on, because I think that we've talked about enough of the spoiler stuff. I mean, the moments are fine, but the moments are like a big deal. And those aren't even worth talking about. I mean, if you experience them, and I think that you build your own connection with Atreus through it, or Trace, whatever. But that being said, I'm almost curious to see if Corey leaves this, because he said he still doesn't know if he wants to make another one right now or not.
I hope he does.
But here's the thing, is if he leaves this, whoever comes in has got big shoes to fill, right?
And they won't. I don't think they'll do it.
I feel like as a writer, and I get this as an artist, when you put out something that is this
monumental,
it's this praised for the specific element in which he was the most important factor in,
right?
Which is the narrative and story and what he was trying to do, his vision for what you were going to experience.
You can't take that away.
What is that pressure going to do for him as a writer? How is he going to make a second game and not feel like he can't? And not feel like he's constantly in his own mind being like, I have to top myself.
Well, see,
that's already what this was.
But
it was easier goal for him to top his work on God of War 2 because God of War 2 did not have the most amazing
narrative
story in the world.
Yeah, I think it actually had the worst out of the first 3 games from what I've seen. And from what I played 2, I've watched pretty much the ending of 3. I think 2 was the weakest.
What's funny is he did do the story of Ghost of Sparta, which is my favorite story so far.
Well,
his favorite story before this game.
Right, yeah. I think that what everybody should understand, and they probably know, is that this being such a good entry, that this is just the introduction. And that the next game may not be able to top it because it's not the same type of experience. You're not getting to know these characters, but instead you're taking the emotions that you've pretty much earned and you've come across with these new characters. You're taking these emotions and you're carrying with you to this next journey. And I think that's what's gonna make the second game so good, is that you're going through these new hardships.
But I just hope that we don't see this. I just hope we don't see what they call the sophomore slump, where when you come back for your second, there's something inevitably weaker about it.
There's always just right before the biggest climax. There's always just the smallest lull, and that could be it. And what's crazy is that it's still probably going to be a fantastic game, just not
I'm sure,
as good as the
I'm
first
sure,
one.
but I will say this much. Based off of the experience I've had with the first one, my hype for this game was already high. My hype for the second is going to be so hard to contain.
Yeah, and I'm
that's
really
gonna be
curious
crazy.
if Detroit can dethrone this. I highly doubt Detroit can. As much as
As a whole package, I don't see it, to be dead honest.
Did you
As
play
a
the Detroit
story,
demo,
I played it at PSX,
yeah.
so I didn't need to.
It was fairly strong.
No, I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and doing the whole flowchart thing was interesting for sure. But
so.
I may go into that more on episode 57 of Triangle Squared.
Okay, yeah.
You
with
guys
that
know
being
where to
said,
find us.
Yep, and if you have any thoughts on this, like we said, if you're watching on video, let us know your thoughts in the below. I mean, now make sure that the comments are spoiler free. If you want to talk spoiler, you can hop into our Discord chat, which we have linked into our YouTube videos. We'll make sure it's linked into this one as well, and it's on our Twitter. And what we'll do from there is we have a God of War discussion channel that is about to open up into a full spoiler channel. We wanted to give everybody at least a little bit of time, but now we're going to make a straight up spoiler channel. If you want to talk spoilers in there with us, you can. You want to talk spoilers with other fans and of the game or other of our listeners, you can do that too, sharing within the community. But with that being said, this has been Triangle Squared. Thank you.
10 out of 10, you guys.